Just before we get Dominic, I wrote a little something that I'm happy to share today with you all. When I was asked to talk about Dominic, woohoo! When I was invited to discuss women empowerment, I asked myself so many questions like, am I empowered? Like, most of the time I don't feel empowered at all. Do you women out here feel empowered? On the day-to-day, you feel empowered?
Like a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10, I would say, for speaking myself.
Yeah, that's on a good day for me. What would it take for us to feel empowered was one question I was asking myself. And what is power when it comes to women and women of color? How much are we allowed to be empowered?
The tea is hot today, ladies.
I have questions. Are we allowed to be empowered as much as we let ourselves be? Is it in our control? Unapologetically, can we be irreverent in our power? Or will we be called names for it? Recently, I came across the Cuts podcast where they were talking about power and women. In particular, when a woman can risk being disliked because of how much power she has. And as women, we have to stand with each other and cheer one another. We need to uplift each other and celebrate each other's success so that it feels good to be empowered because your community got you. We were raised to apologize for our existence. If you are like me, a woman of color, a minority, you probably had to work 2 or 3 times as hard to be where you are, to sit at the table you are sitting at, or to have the power to affect change, positive change. You had to push, trailblaze, defy, rewrite the job description, learn on your own, pray, and continue to move forward, following your mission with as much self-love and integrity as you could get. In my case, I always chose the hard road, or more likely it chose me. I was born in a war and had to escape with my family. I saw my parents struggle with dignity to find their place and fight racism with more self-love and more celebration for who they are. I saw myself breaking taboos, rules, talking about the elephant in the room, and just like my parents, defying racism like it's nothing at all from a very young age up until today. But what is diversity? What does inclusion mean? Are we a spice on a warm mashed potato salad? Are we an afterthought? How much are we inspired by diversity, though? Come on. If you see it, you can be it. Dapper Dan shared at the UN recently, at the United Nations recently, talking about hip-hop culture, sustainability, and empowerment. It was the first time hip-hop was being mentioned at the United Nations, let alone represented. And I am so proud of having been able to manifest that at that scale. I felt empowered. I felt that I too don't come alone in these spaces. I come back by my ancestors and women before me who trailblazed the place for us. With power comes responsibility. How are you utilizing your platform to lift other women up, to amplify their voices? How are you making sure women and women of color are empowered? How are you passing the mic so that our unique voices are being heard? And on that note, I would like to introduce you to my wonderful, powerful panelists and inspiring women. So, ladies, each of you can take the mic and discuss a little bit about who you are and tell us a little bit about yourselves in your own words. You want to start? You have a mic. Oh.
Is it still morning? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is. Hi, everybody. My name is Dominique Drakeford. I'm from Oakland. I now reside in Brooklyn. I am the founder of a digital platform called Melaninass, and the ass stands for And Sustainable Style. It's a place that's celebrating people of color in sustainable fashion, natural beauty, wellness, and land justice spaces. I'm also the co-founder of Sustainable Brooklyn, which is an information and resource-based initiative that's focusing on giving disenfranchised communities in Brooklyn agency in the sustainability space. And my whole, I guess, what I do, whether I'm a style influencer or writer or what have you, is focused around liberation and redefining sustainability so that it is representative of the very people who created the ideology of sustainability, so that we have a seat at the table in a movement that essentially recreated. So that's Dominique.
Woo! Melanin ass. I love that. I'm Jazerai Allen Lord, aka Nerd Like Jazzy, creative strategist at an impact agency called Crush and Lovely, a sneaker and streetwear veteran. I've been 15 years in the business, 10 years at Kicks on Fire on the Complex Network, and in the last 5 or 6 years working in streetwear, owning a brand as well as designing for a number of other brands. Today I work internally with a number of some of your favorite brands in creating messaging that speaks to young people of color and to women in more authentic and direct ways, hence the impact agency. Coming in and finding a point of leverage and really wanting to make a change there instead of just working on maybe like your new party or your new shoe or like whatever it is. So today I spend most of my time at engagements like this with women like this, speaking, telling my story and trying to encourage other women to maybe take a different route other than the influencer route or the glam girl route, and to give a physical representation of what it looks like to be somebody that does the work and lives on both sides of it. Currently preparing for the release of my unisex shoe with Reebok. And so if you do the work, I was a girl that made $5 an article as a sneaker journalist, so you can be a designer too.
Yay! I'm the hype girl, the MC.
Hi, my name is Niki. I'm a fashion designer for my own brand, Niki Srinivasa. And a little bit about me. So when I was younger, I actually had the worst sense of style, and it was kind of dismal, like looking back at pictures. And I always thought that it was because fashion wasn't my thing. It wasn't something that I enjoyed. But as I started to, pay more attention to what I was seeing all around me, we see and digest over 20,000 images on across, all social media and magazines. I really realized that part of the reason why I didn't have a good sense of style or confidence in myself was because I didn't feel beautiful in comparison to what the standards of beauty were being portrayed as. We see one type of beauty so often across all these media channels, and as a young girl, it really played a big part in my psyche. But really, once I realized that I wasn't the problem, my body wasn't the problem, it was the messages, I began to look at fashion as a friend, and I really fell in love with designing. And so I'm really happy to be where I am today. In September 2018, I debuted my collection at New York Fashion Week, and then I was invited to And then I was invited to show in Paris Fashion Week after that, which was a really great experience. And my mission is to really create clothes for all women, no matter what their size is, because I believe style shouldn't have a number attached to it. We all deserve to feel beautiful exactly as we are. And in an industry that tries to fight that, I really want to make waves and make a difference and allow women, to feel beautiful the way they are.
Hi, my name is Ruth DeGolia. I am founder and CEO of Mercado Global. We help indigenous women in rural Latin America build community artists and co-ops that they own, and then we help them sell directly to big retailers in the international fashion industry. So in the US, we sell to Reformation, Levi Strauss, Stitch Fix, Nordstrom. And it's exciting to have the privilege to work with these amazing indigenous women who may not have had the chance to go to school, but they're fighters and they're incredibly talented weavers and embroidery artisans. And by creating this market connection, they're able to bring massive income into their communities, and it changes the lives of their families, of their kids. It makes a whole new future possible. And part of that is helping big retailers realize they could have profits through principles. That, we don't ask our retail clients to compromise on the markups they need. We know that to scale, it has to be financially successful for them. And it's exciting to show them that there are places in their supply chain where they can increase socially responsible sourcing and they can have profits through principles. And I love, sitting down with buyers and designers who have never worked with artisans, have only worked with factories, and show them that this could be successful. Who doesn't want to help a mom send her kids to school? So it's great work, and it's exciting to see so many of you here excited about this movement.
Yay, thank you so much. So during this panel, we're going to address a few issues: funding, women's bodies and self-love, gender equality, and streetwear and sustainability. We're going to start with funding. According to UN Women, women's economic empowerment is central to realizing women's rights and gender equality. Globally, over 2.7 billion women are legally restricted from having the same choice of jobs as men. According to the McKinsey report, advancing women's equality can add up to $12 trillion to global growth. Yet, we don't have that access. We don't have that access. US female-founded startups have raised just 2.2% of venture capitalist investment in 2018, and only 0.2% of all this VC funding went to startups funded by Black women. How do we shift this economic reality to benefit women, their businesses, and empower them to enter the workforce as soon as fucking possible? Take the mic and share your thoughts with me. How do we shift this economic reality to benefit women? How do we make it happen, in your opinion?
So I think the first thing that needs to happen is a certain level of education, right? These are very real stats that I feel like anybody who has a stake in this space should know and understand, should digest and create action around those statistics. I think realizing, the patriarchal and also oppressive system that we're in makes you have to take that first step of education, number one, and then activation, and realize that, okay, so now we need to empower women. That's what this panel is about. Do I have a woman of color sitting at the table because they are the people who are disproportionately affected most? But then they also are the people who are the most innovative. So, do I have a woman of color sitting at the table? Am I exhausting all of my resources to making sure that I am really about liberating women's rights, which thus acts, if you're actually in a space where you care about sustainability and social justice and really moving the pendulum forward in this space. And I think that's a critical starting point, is education and then activation and making sure that our voices are heard and not just, going off of diversity and representation. It's not about tokenism, which is what tends to happen with a lot of these bigger brands, and that's not a solution. People of color, women of color, need to have a stake in the business, a creative stake. They need to have financial stakes. They need to be able to have a real and legitimized presence so that we can stop this fuckery, honestly. At this point, it's ridiculous. And we have to make sure that, because women have been fighting for a long time. And so within these systems, we need to break down the system in such a way to where we're giving women, especially women of color, agency.
And that's not a charity. I mean, just before you speak, it's not about charity. It's not about looking good or feeling good. It's
Not
about
at
the
all.
economics. It's
Right.
about adding $12 trillion to the global net worth. It's
Right.
about empowering women so we all contribute economically to the innovation and the growth of our, of our societies.
Right.
I completely agree with everything that you said, and I think, to also add on to what you said, a lot of money has been left on the table. A lot of really great businesses aren't being funded. It's a drain on the economy, so it's in all of our interest to address this. And I think, this is such a complex problem that needs to be fought hard on so many fronts. But I think two approaches that I'd particularly like to call out. First is it has to be a core KPI for companies. These guys, VCs, other investors, they know about KPI dashboards. They know that if it's a number that they're held accountable to that's going to be tracked, they're actually going to pay attention to work on it and not just kind of try half-heartedly. And the reality is the reasons why women-run businesses aren't being funded are complex, and they involve confronting inner biases that people may not recognize in themselves.
And power dynamics.
That's right. And looking at how that plays out in everything from assumptions about names to how we handle childbearing in our society to what does a leader look like? Can a leader be feminine? So a lot of work has to go into this, and to make sure that people pay attention to it and work on it, it has to be a KPI at every company that everyone is held accountable to. The second thing that I would say is that women need to help each other. I love things like Golden Seeds. There are a lot of new kind of VC firms that are where they're funded by women and they target funding women. These are great. I think women need to do more and more to help each other. And I'll give you an example. So we're actually structured as a nonprofit, and in some ways that's a little bit easier. I mean, a lot of these issues also, there's a reason why most executive directors in the nonprofit sector are men. I mean, women are very underrepresented in the executive circles within nonprofit, even though we're overrepresented in the sector in general. But usually it's not as bad as if we were a for-profit looking for investment funding. A couple weeks ago, I went to a gathering called by one of our biggest donors of all the social enterprises they were funding around the world. And I was floored to be one of only 2 women out of dozens of people there, most of whom were white, is the other thing, even though most of us were working in the developing world. And it really blew me away, and in the course of the conference, listening to how the executives at this foundation talked about leadership, and I realized, gosh, they have such a gendered view of leadership. And I tried talking to them about it directly, and it's difficult because they fund us, and I'm trying to balance this, and I didn't feel they were very open to listening to me. But then they did something else, which is they said they wanted to find more social enterprises to fund. Would I help them find more social enterprises? And I was like, I'm going to go find 15 amazing women-run social enterprises and introduce them to them. And sometimes, that's the best way to get it started, to start showing them there are other ways to do things. So I encourage all of you to think about how you can be part of the solution on this issue.
Absolutely, Jazerai.
I just want to say that KPI shit is real cute, but let's talk about reality. When you are a woman of color, there's a word called intersectionality. Okay, and I suggest you get very, very familiar with it. It is being a woman and being a part of another oppressed group at the same time. And when you are making a fight to get to where you want to be in your career, not only for yourself, but for the women that come behind you, the women that were before you, the women that are standing next to you, you've tried a KPI approach, honey. You have tried a strategy. You have put the best of the brains together in those rooms and pitched your greatest ideas, and they don't never get off. And the reason is, unfortunately, women of color make white men uncomfortable, period. We do. And y'all could, and I guess the response from that, I'm not the only person that feels that way. As a person that's been sitting at this table for quite some time and been in these board meetings and met with even other female designers and tried to pitch my best ideas and been talking the same shit I've been talking since 2006, and now they care. That has nothing to do with the KPI, honey, no shade. But it just really has to do with being who I am, what I look like, what I sound like, and the unfortunate reality that I make some of your mothers and your fathers uncomfortable in those rooms. And this is the reality of, this is America. This is today's America, where in Gen Z, 60-something% of the children are multicultural. They come from many, many different backgrounds. It is not a white woman in a boardroom. It is not a white man in a boardroom making it a decision. It is a conglomerate of creatives from all walk of life. It is called diversity of thought, and I suggest you get very familiar with it.
Okay, we're gonna switch to, I love this, yes, woohoo! What a
We don't play them
difficult
types of
panel,
games here
but we
today,
are
honey.
the best. Okay, women's bodies and self-love. Something I struggle with so much. Do we struggle with that also, or like you have found a way?
I think it's always a struggle to look in the mirror and wholeheartedly love what you see. I don't think that, I think a large part of that is, again, going back to the media and what we see every single day about what beauty is or what it should be or how we should look. You know, you see beauty products to improve, this or that. You see all these different things, and you don't always just see, things that just allow you to fully, embrace who you are as you are. And I think with self-love, a lot of it's unfortunate because you don't have as many opportunities looking outward into the industry to find, outlets to express that. A lot of it has to come from looking inside yourself and knowing you are enough exactly as you are. We're all, works in progress every single day. There are days when I wake up and it's already 3 o'clock and I'm still in bed and I have done nothing on my to-do list. And as opposed to talking down to myself and making myself feel bad, I just have to give myself a pat on the back for, I did the best I could today. Tomorrow's a new day to be better, to keep trying, to keep persevering, because, we go through so much every single day as women, what we just talked about, we often don't get the seats at the table. And so to be able to, you start with yourself and know, fully believe that you are enough, because every single person is enough the way they are. It's hard, but it has to start from within yourself, and
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being so vulnerable. I just want to add that approximately 80% of US women don't like how they look. 80%. And in a society that profits from your self-doubt, liking and loving yourself is a rebellious act. What does self-love mean to you?
I just gave a talk at TrillFit Boston, which is a Black-owned fitness flagship in Boston my best friend owns. And the talk was on self-love, and I feel like this conversation is so important. It's looking within, because you have to love yourself enough to bring your whole self everywhere that you go. Into those boardrooms, in your relationship with your friends, into your designs, into your aesthetic. You have to bring your whole self everywhere you go, or you will not be prayed up to deal with the life that awaits you out here. And in order to do that, you really have to accept that, this is my hair, this is my skin, this is my weight, this is where I live, this is the reality of my financial situation, and that's okay. And be transparent with yourself and be transparent with other people. The more that you tell the truth to other people about who you are and what you're going through and where you've been, the vulnerability opens up with other people, and they can meet you in a safe space, and you've created a safe space for another woman to share with you. And I think that's where the impact happens. At Crush and Lovely, we do something called an impact commitment. We go around the country with these cards, and we have a digital link that says, look, individually, we're all doing the work, and we're burnt out. We've tried, we've had these conversations, but what can we do together? What impact can you make on your own to commit to taking on a mentee, volunteering for 10 hours, meditating? What can you do to commit to love yourself more, to bring your whole self to the table, to change some of these issues that we face today?
For me, embodies all of that. In today's day and age and how the systems work, for me, self-love is about constantly establishing resilience. I think that's important because we're facing so much shit on a daily basis about how we look, hair politics, our clothing. We're being knocked down day in and day out as a woman, again, as a black woman living in America. So a lot for resistance and resilience has a lot to do with how I navigate these spaces and continue to nurture myself. And for me, self-love is also about establishing a community of influence, so a sisterhood, and being able to connect with other badass women who love themselves and who are about community and who are about fighting and innovation and all of these things. So self-love for me is definitely attached to community. Like, I'm really, really, really big on community, especially growing up in Oakland. Self-love was very much rooted in the energy of community based on Black Panther Party, and the energy of community based on, I lived around a lot of trees, so the community based on the outdoors and being around trees. So I think self-love is something that has to be practiced day in and day out, and the reality is you're not gonna love yourself every day. You're gonna have challenges and trials and tribulations, but it's a consistent act of putting yourself first. It's a consistent act of knowing that you are here on this journey, you are here experiencing and being in these spaces and connecting with the world and shielding yourself. Sometimes self-love is about creating a bubble, being in a corner, making sure you get up in the morning to just be by yourself, take a deep breath and say, you know what, I'm a badass today. Or you know what, I'm gonna work on this so that I can make sure that I'm loving myself when I present my whole identity to the world. And so, yeah, self-love is a consistent act of showing up. Yeah.
Oh, do you want to say something? You sure? What about you? What is self-love to you?
I'll say one thing. I really love what you said about community. I think, to me, that's one of the most important things that keeps me going and keeps me grounded is, choose your friends well, but also build circles of people that share your values, that are grounded, that can help you remember who you are, and people that love you. Especially with all the work that we all do, it's hard out there. It's really tough. And I've learned the hard way that if I just work and I don't invest in my community, I get burnt out. And so I actually schedule in time with my circle of friends. I have a lot of other friends that run social enterprises, and we support each other, we share ideas, we just love each other. So I encourage all of you to do that if you don't have that in your life.
What about you? You started it, but I didn't have. What is self-love to you, and how can you empower other women to feel self-love through the art that you do, the designs that you do?
So for me, self-love is truly just unapologetically owning who I am and embracing all my flaws, all the things I love about myself, every inch about who I am. It's really about taking all those things in and understanding that, with my entire heart, that I am enough and I am worthy of success. I'm worthy of following my goals, of achieving my dreams, just like every single person is. And I think for me, it starts with being a little bit nicer to myself. I've always put so much pressure on myself, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that, I've had to hustle a lot. I've had to network. I've had to push and get my name out there as much as I can. I work really hard, and so some of that translates into sometimes I haven't been as nice to myself. But someone once told me, and I think about this all the time, is when, it's so easy to just get mad at yourself or to be down on yourself. But if you try, it really works. Try talking to yourself like talking to your fourth grade self. So if you think about yourself as a little, a young person, and you wouldn't talk to a young person the way you often would talk to yourself now. So when you think about that, you have to be nice to yourself. And for me, if I'm not nice with myself, then I know it shows up in so many other facets of my life. Then I start to just be upset with the people around me, the community that I choose to surround myself with. I don't get I don't get the things done that I want to get done. I'm stalling myself when I'm not as kind to myself. Mm-hmm. And I think with empowering other women, I think a lot of it, I think it starts, like we were talking, when you're empowered yourself, I think that it's such a radiant thing when a woman is empowered. You can see it. You can see it in the way she presents herself when she's confident and strong and assured in herself. And I think just that in and of itself is so inspiring and inspires it kind of like a domino effect that really inspires other women to, want to be the best version of themselves, to love themselves the way they are. And I think, also making efforts like all of us today, like in trying to change the conversation, trying to make it more inclusive, trying to embrace, every single person and women that come from all different backgrounds. I think by doing all these things, by making all these changes, and by, constantly, I guess, being vulnerable, by, being open, by giving people permission to be themselves, I think that is how, women start to feel empowered, and empowered women can make the world a much different and better place.
I guess this is a much bigger conversation than we are given time for, but thank you so much for your time.
Can I say
hope
something?
you enjoyed.
Can I say something
Yes,
really quickly?
of course.
By show of hands, can everybody hear me? By show of hands, does anybody know who Gladys West is? We're at a fashion and tech event. Does anybody know who Gladys West is? No. Okay. So I was thinking on the panel, who was it? Google and Levi. I don't know if you gentlemen are still here. You guys were talking about a GPS tracker in your clothes, and you guys were talking about radical innovation. Gladys West is a black woman. She's a mathematician who should be given credit for GPS, but she isn't given credit. So when we're talking about women empowerment and we're at a tech panel, why doesn't everybody who is in innovation and tech know who Gladys West is? We have so many brilliant brains in here, but because of the colonization of our educational system, we don't know who the black women and the indigenous women are who have paved the way innovatively, scientifically, educationally, who have paved the way for where you are today. And this is what I'm talking about, a seat at the table that was made by us. In order for us to really push this industry forward, you guys need to make sure that women of color, not only are you giving notoriety to the historical black figures who have paved the way for where you are today, you need to make sure that they have a seat at the table so that we can fucking heal this planet. Your business, if you're sitting at a table like this and your business does not look like this, something is wrong. You guys everybody in here needs women of color at the fucking table. And I'm tired of it, period. That's it.
Drops mic.
And on that note, we're done.
Thank you so much.